So what about the Korean history? Who have reigned this area in the past? Why did the Japanese invade Korea in the beginning of the 20th century? What happens to the Koreans afterwards? I'm at Alan Lee, a student of international relations at Seoul National University, to find out about historical moments that have shaped Korea and made it what it is today.
The Joseon dynasty has to be seen in the context of the entire Korean history. Long before Joseon dynasty, for over 1,000 years, the regimes on the Korean peninsula have adopted the Confucius idea as their rule of governing. It regards the family as a basic unit of society, so the whole society should be one big family. Traditionally, each member of a family had certain roles that must be fulfilled so that the entire family can function. The Confucius idea emphasized one's particular role for the society. For example, the rulers had a duty of protecting and enlightening the ruled, which engages in economic activity and other small but essential functions. Koreans took it for granted these roles they were given in the society for a long time, including the Joseon period. Therefore, people have preferred gradual change to radical transformation, and we've had strong hierarchy in the society, although gradually disappearing. The youngers tend to respect the elders as if they were all our parents. And we've also had a strong tradition of having rituals for our ancestors annually. Unlike the European feudalism, Korean kings including Joseon dynasty had long enjoyed centralized power. Compared with dukes in the European history, the ruling people of Joseon were basically philosophers, although they had limited land and military power. The understanding of Confucius philosophy was the criteria of choosing government officials. They advised the king's policy according to the Confucius idea, and they spent nights studying Confucius books. According to the Confucius idea, academic activities were valued while commerce or craftsmanship were marginalized. The ruled worked in the fields of the rulers to pay taxes or used their little craftsmanship to produce instruments and serve their military service. Again, Koreans had long preferred gradual changes. The Western way of life were astonishing and unacceptable to the rulers at first. They resisted such a drastic change, but they also sought for their own development. They selectively brought in Western knowledges and techniques since 19th century. Japan, however, identified themselves as the Western powers and copied the colonist policy. Japan approached by claiming that Korea should develop with the help of Japanese people. Koreans did not welcome them, even resisted them. But the Japanese military forces raided the king's palace, killed the empress first, then threatened the king to sign the treaty that yielded his power to Japan. The king refused to sign it, but Japan forged the treaty with fake signature in 1905. The Japanese colonial rule was thus illegal from the beginning. People got angry and actively resisted. Although the Japanese had already disarmed Joseon's military forces, the citizens organized their own army to protest. For the first 10 years of colonial period, Japanese military forces ruthlessly suppressed these resistance. The resistance fled to China and kept on fighting. During that period, Japan also made all the farms on Korean peninsula under the Japanese control. During 1920s, Japanese closed down all the Korean schools and reopened them as Japanese schools. They only taught Japanese language, Japanese history, Japanese way of life. In the 30s, when Japan was at war, lots of Koreans were forced to work in factories to work for the Japanese military. Women were forcefully sent to the war spots and used as sexual slave. Even the Dutch women in Indonesia were done the same thing. Japan exploited the Korean peninsula for the entire colonial period. Nothing was left No factories, no technologies, no government when the Japanese were gone. Then came the Soviet Union and the US. Their confrontation divided the peninsula by one democratic state in the south and one communist state in the north. Soon the Soviet and the North Korea invaded the South Korea. The Civil War became an international war as the US and the UN intervened to save this small democratic state. Once deprived of everything by Japan, Korean Peninsula was devastated again by the war. Korea started off again after the war with the military and economic aid from the US. The US provided lots of assistance to this small democratic country at the tip of Asian continent as part of their strategy to confront the communism more effectively after the Korean War. Well, I've heard of it many times. I think this development was possible because of the painful history of Korea. The Europeans developed their own rule and expanded it worldwide, while Korea, like other Asian nations, wanted to develop in their own way, but was forced to accept the unfamiliar system. Actually, what Japanese did was worse than what other European nations would have done to us. After the Japanese retreated, we were, and we still are, at the front line of Cold War. The fear of another suffering made us follow anything that would let us survive. We had no time to hesitate, but just follow the fastest way to protect and feed ourselves. We did anything to develop our economy. Without any knowledge of a car, for example, we bought one and broke it down, reassembled it, and then produced lots of cars until we finally have the world's number 5 car company, Hyundai. Our history had bright sides and dark sides. Well, and now, as a developed country, we're trying to review the path we've been through in order to create our own way ahead.